Good morning, everybody. So for those of you who don't know much about TSB, I'll do the whistle-stop tour of who we are. We're a medium-sized bank. We look after around about 5 million customers in the UK through our branches, through digital channels, through video banking and telephone banking. We're an organisation of around about 6,000 colleagues. And we're spread up and down the country. We do have a heritage that goes back over 200 years, and you know, we're really proud of our social heritage, because our founder, Reverend Henry Duncan, back in 1810 was the founder of the savings bank movement up in Scotland. So we do have solid credentials to work from. But if I bring us up to date, in 2019, we set out really on the early part of our responsible business journey. And what we wanted to do was to have a greater impact, but we had fewer resources to make that impact. So we were looking at how we could really focus in on the things that were going to really matter to our customers, to our colleagues, and to our stakeholders. So the starting point for me, as I set that work out, was really to look at the different kind of frameworks or accreditations that were out there, because I needed to answer a couple of questions. So, you know, are we getting it right? So are we heading in the right direction? And actually, you know, rather than me marking my own homework, is there somebody else out there who can say, actually, yes, you are, and give me the, you know, the thumbs up? So we were introduced to Good Business Charter actually in early 2020 by the CBI. And, you know, it instantly appealed to me. And the reason it appealed was, one, it was straightforward, or is straightforward. And, you know, I looked at other schemes which much more complicated. And as Julian has already said, not only is it straightforward, but it's all encompassing. So it does really tick all of the boxes across the different areas of responsible business. It was also very relatable. So when I started to talk to people within my organisation, so in a larger organisation, obviously you have to go out and you have to kind of appeal to people and say, you know, can you do this bit of work? Can you provide this bit of evidence for me? But I got a really kind of easy pathway into kind of that stakeholder, because it was so relatable and straightforward. And I think the thing that really appealed was around this making a commitment, and, you know, looking at those 10 components and being able to tick, and we were able to tick some of them quite easily and go, yeah, we absolutely do that. But there were some parts of the components which we were like, oh, we could probably do a bit better in this space. But the fact that we could make a promise to bridge the gap and still get accredited was a really, really positive thing for us. So as I said, you know, we looked at the components. We, you know, I took it out to lots of different parts of my business, and really there was a couple of areas that really stood out for us where, you know, we could go further. So this time, you know, like early 2020, we're just heading into pandemic. You know, the world is about to kind of turn upside down on us. And one area that we looked at very closely was how quickly we paid our supply chain. So we basically realized that very early on in the pandemic that, you know, as a bigger organization, it was incumbent on us to make sure that the smaller organizations, at the very least, that we deal with, we paid them as quickly as possible. So we made a pledge that we would pay them within 10 days. So we kind of kicked that work off at the same time as going through our accreditation process. What the Good Business Charter accreditation process helped us with was to really make sure we went and committed with the prompt payment code. So we, you know, we got the tick and we went further. I'm really proud to say that work and that focus on that work means that in 2022 we paid our small suppliers on average in 4 days, and we paid all of our suppliers in average of 9 days. And we're not a small organisation. I mean, we're not a retailer. We don't have thousands and thousands of suppliers, but we have, you know, we have a fair number. So that was a really a big step, and I think the Good Business Charter has really helped us hone in on that as an activity. But it also helped us really hone in on some other stuff that we were doing around strengthening our environmental commitments and importantly, looking at the clarity of our tax status and how we display that and communicate that to the wider world. So we signed up in June, and it was an absolutely central part of our launch comms around our responsible business strategy, the Do What Matters plan. Now, following on from that, we're really proud to display the Good Business Charter mark for all the reasons that Julian said, because consumers want to deal with good businesses, they just don't know who those good businesses are. And if it really answers that challenge for them, but it only answers that challenge if we can turn this into a movement. And I know, Julian, you said about we need to go at a pace, but we need to, all of us who are on here, who are accredited organizations, or anybody who is who's thinking about joining, displaying it proudly is actually part of the deal, because that's the way we get our message out. That's the way we turn this into a movement that consumers can really understand and recognize. I think there are so many pressures on consumers these days. Cost of living. For our bank customers, we see the pressures that customers are under. It's not equal, so we obviously have some customers that are doing quite well out of this. But hence the reason we need to really lean into kind of social equality. But what we are seeing through the research that we're doing is that dealing with businesses that are good, that are sustainable, who are socially conscious and ethical, consumers still see this as an important part of their decision-making process. Now, Julian's going to, is skeptical about this stat that I've got, but recent research says that in the financial services market, that 56% of consumers don't mind paying extra for something that they consider to be good, and I mean that by an ethical stance. Now, the proof with that for us is we shouldn't be adding extra cost into products. We should be delivering the products at the right cost for our customers and giving them the added halo benefit that they are dealing with a good business. I think for me, I have a vision for good business and the community that we work with in the Good Business Charter to become like a red tractor mark or a fair trade mark, so that really people instantly recognise it. And I would be very happy to talk to any of you about how we kind of keep talking about it within our organisation and with our customers, but I'd really appeal to you to give it a go, and we found massive benefit from it.